speaking with Paul the last few weeks before he passed, I don't think it was till then that he actually recognized the type of impact he had on people, the kind of, as Larry said, mentorship, leadership, friendship that he developed with people, and the impact he had in spreading Holocaust education. Paul would always say this was a group effort, and of course it is. Many people contributed to the growth and spread of Holocaust genocide education. But it really was Paul who made it thrive and grow throughout the state during the last 40 years. And I can say without question, New Jersey has the best Holocaust education program in the United States. And that's really because of Paul. Paul was consulted by many other states. He even went to China a few years ago to talk about the program. But he just thought it was part of his job. He didn't really think it was particularly special what he did. I'm glad that he fully recognized that it was special, it was different, that he was a remarkable person, that it was the kind of rapport that he had with people, and the kind of enthusiasm and passion he had for Holocaust and genocide education, and education in particular, and educators in particular. So that was, a thing that was really important, I think, the last couple of months for him to know. As far as I was concerned, Paul, was, as Larry said, a friend and a mentor for many years, and taught me so much, and I could never repay him for that, and just such a decent, solid human being. A mensch, as we say, but Paul used to love to say one of his favorite words was being an upstander, and you couldn't find a more upstanding, dignified person, remarkable person than Paul Winkler. It was really amazing. I also want to acknowledge Paul's family, because that was his number one passion. Clearly, hardly ever a conversation you had with Paul didn't mention his children, his grandchildren, and his great-grandchild. He had such love and such devotion to them, and it was them that kept him going on. And I think all the work for the Holocaust education. I would tell Paul all the time, slow down. For over 2 years, he was just going up and down the state, and so to keep him from doing that, I must say I failed miserably. It is what sustained him. He wanted to do it, and there was no way it wasn't going to happen. The only other thing I wanted to mention, because Paul would want to keep this, a little uplifted, is Paul was a man of remarkable patience. He really was, and you had to be, because Holocaust education would not have thrived unless you had a person who had infinite patience, not because that's good in and of itself. Now it's more accepted, but when we instituted this program many years ago, there was a lot of pushback from school administrators, from school districts, from the public in certain towns, and Paul patiently go up, explain things, show them how this could be done in a way that there was no conflict, and it doesn't minimize any of the great atrocities that may have happened to other groups. And he would really have a remarkable way of just listening and coming up with a solution and resolving things. And people would tell me all the time, I mean, the man has infinite patience. I have to tell you, that is a myth. He may have had infinite patience with all of you, but when it came to the Philadelphia area sports teams, that stopped. I mean, here you could find this upstanding, dignified man sitting in his chair, yelling at the TV when the Eagles and the Phillies were on, just like a lot of us would be, and he liked it. So he really was an all-around terrific person. And again, I thank all of you for coming here. It's a tremendous tribute. Thank you.
Folks, the next person who's going to honor Paul is a man named Wendell Steinhauer, who is president of the NJEA, and hopefully he will tolerate our saying one or two good things about him. I just came back from working for Maud on the trip to the camps and sites in Europe. And the NJEA made it possible for 31 teachers to get on that bus who could not have otherwise afforded to go. And really Wendell's generous, he's helpful, and he did a wonderful job for these teachers. Hopefully, you will all take cognizance of that.
Thank you, thank you. Well, good evening, and welcome to a celebration of a great man, a true educator, and a powerful voice in our state, Paul Winkler. To some, Paul was a colleague. To others, he was a friend or a family member. But to everyone who ever met Paul, he was that truth and educator. And the goal of so many educators is to leave a lasting impact on the world, and more importantly, to leave an impression on the people around them. And Paul, well, to say Paul Winkler left an impact on those who he interacted with would simply be an understatement. His presence, his passion, and the power of his work are not only profoundly relevant today, but his work and his role in the education in this state will be felt for decades to come. I'm not going to list all of Paul's accolades or the many great awards he has earned throughout his career, but I would be remiss if I didn't mention his work with curriculum development for the educators and students of the state of New Jersey. He was the force behind the curricula that students now and will continue to receive that deals with issues and events as recent as 9/11 and as far back as the Holocaust. Regardless of the content or subject matter at hand, Paul's work was always powerful. It was moving, and it was never just about the facts. His work in developing curriculum focused on teaching those intangible elements of human life that are so important, yet often so hard to reach in a classroom. Paul's work spread compassion, understanding, and love. At a time when it's never been more important to our children to learn and accept those who differ from them, Paul took on the charge and embraced it. Paul taught us to confront our past, good, bad, or ugly, and he taught us that we must embrace our history and grow from it, learn from it, become stronger because of it. And that is a lesson that no one will ever forget. And without any more from me, I would like to introduce a short video that's made up of some brief moments in time that capture the true spirit of Paul. As you will see, Paul reminded his students, let us remember that we are our brother's keepers.
Like a teacher one time We're joined by Dr. Paul Winkler, head of the commission that designs and implements Holocaust and genocide education and awareness in our state. Dr. Winkler, welcome to Classroom Close-Up, New Jersey.
Thank you.
Say hi, Dr. Winkler.
The Holocaust Commission was established in 1982 when Governor Tom Kane appointed the first commission in the country to look at studying the Holocaust and all issues of genocide dealing with bias, prejudice, and intolerance. If you're prejudiced, just come up here. But if you're not prejudiced, if you don't have any prejudice, go to the factory. My feeling is that if we stop doing the efforts, I think we will be taken over with a tsunami of hate. Thank you for being honest. Liar, liar. We all have it. Remembering the past and then helping the students become better people. We have to help our students understand they are part of a bigger world. They are not isolates on an island somewhere. That everything they do impacts someone else. So we are our brother's keeper. Terrorism, bullying, prejudice, they're all linked together. Hate is hate. And in our schools, any way we can get survivors and students together is very important for us.
Being a child survivor, hidden child, it's very important to me to share my story with the students throughout the state. We couldn't put up a fight, we couldn't mobilize our forces, and we were suddenly found ourselves also an occupied country.
And I tell them too that all this genocides that are happening even today is all because of ethnic and religious differences, people of the same nationality, and not respecting each other. I think Paul has been unbelievable. It is just amazing what that man has done.
There's a story that we use quite often called the hangman. The hangman came to town, and they came for the communists. And I was not one, so I did nothing. And the hangman did his job.
His heart is in the right place. He is such a mensch.
And they came for the trade unionists, and I was not one, and the hangman did his job.
He is just the nicest, kindest person.
And they came for the gypsies, and I was not one, and the hangman did his job.
He's just an amazing human being.
And they came for the Jews, but I was not one, and the hangman did his job.
He cares and for everyone.
And then they came for me, and there was no one left to speak for me, and the hangman did his job.
I think there's only one Paul Winkler on this earth.
And for myself, I need to find the person that's going to continue this kind of level. Someday I'm going to have to say, it's time to sit back a little bit. I thank you for the opportunity to share this.
Folks, we're going to be joined next by Dave Hespy, Commissioner of Education in the State of New Jersey Department of Education. And I invite you to welcome him and let him know how important everybody behind the commission is, because we know how much we depend on them.
Thank you, and thanks for the invitation to come and honor Paul and remember Paul. And I'm going to talk about my work with Paul in three ways. First, his friendship of a quarter of a century, 25 years. Paul is a colleague of mine in many different roles, and then as educational leader of New Jersey. So let me start with Commissioner of Education, what Paul has meant to the state of New Jersey's 2,500 schools. And I just thought opening this was a great way to do it. Who hasn't been touched by Paul? But I think if we were able to get all 1.5 million school children and multiply that by 25 years into the biggest stadium on the planet, I think it would be tough to find one of those school children who had not had a program or a curriculum piece or in some way saw a presentation that Paul or the Holocaust Commission or the department supporting Paul and the Holocaust Commission had not been touched by. And so I think we're actually talking about millions of school children, hundreds of thousands of teachers, if I had to guess, Wendell, and that's truly a tremendous legacy. And so I don't want to in any way pass up the opportunity just to identify the sheer numbers that we're talking about. And as I get into my work with Paul in many different roles, I think you'll get a little better sense of just how much Paul was out there finding ways to support education and to support children becoming global citizens. And I cannot emphasize that much. And Paul was always about that. How can we make certain that children understand their responsibility and as citizens of this great country and in this world? So as educational leader, I wanted to say that. Now as a colleague of Paul's, and Paul and I started in state government in the Councils and Policy Office in Governor Whitman, and so Paul and I soon became good friends, and I went to the Department of Education as Assistant Commissioner in the mid-90s, and within 2 weeks of my arriving, I was on a bus trip with Paul down to the Holocaust Museum, and I got a guided tour of the Holocaust Museum by Paul. And I'll tell you, my professional life changed. I saw commitment up front. I saw passion very clearly. I saw all the sides of human nature you want to see and you want to turn your head from. And he was bold in terms of, Dave, this is what it means to be in leadership of education. We have to go and teach our children. And this is not about math and science. We have to teach our children much beyond that. And when I left that museum and on the ride home, on that bus, I think I really understood what it meant to be an educational leader. I went to Liberty Science Center, so I remember my time up at Liberty Science Center, and it was around 2009, 2010. And Paul called me on the phone and said, Dave, we got to do something about the 9/11 curriculum. And I said, well, Paul, you're with the Holocaust Commission. I'm with Liberty Science Center, word science in there. And Paul said, where do we fit in together? I said, Dave, we got to do this. And so we got partners, the families of the 9/11 together. And Paul just moved that forward, found teachers to write those lesson plans. And it was difficult, and as Phil acknowledged, Paul was a kind man, a humble man, but he could also get things done. And Paul had a way. And at some points, he came into my office at the Science Center, and he said, Dave, I don't know why I'm doing this, because he was really riding himself hard. And we looked at each other, and I laughed. I said, Paul, we know why you're doing this. Come on, we know why you're doing this, because you can't not do this. You've seen a need, and you know children need this, and you're going to make certain they get this. And he really demonstrated that we could get it done, and we did do it. And then the Holocaust Commission deserves a lot of credit for doing something that no one else did at that moment in time. And many teachers used that curriculum 10 years ago at the 10th year anniversary. Now we're at 15 years, the 10th year anniversary, to answer a lot of questions, especially in places that were hit hard by 9/11. And so now let me talk about Paul as my friend. And I don't, when I was actually commissioner twice, and my successor actually is here, Kimberly Harrington. Thank you a lot for helping out, making certain it was, my second term came to an end well. And not a moment went by, not a week went by when I was commissioner that some way, shape, or form I didn't see Paul. He would constantly come visit, and what do you think his first words were? I need this, I need that. It was always, no, it was never that. It was, Dave, how you doing? Can I help you, Dave? You know, never once did he come and say, I need this, I need that. Never once. It was always, Dave, how you doing? Let me help. It looks like you're a little bit stressful. He'd be very impressed that I've gone to being a Fitbit fanatic, by the way. He'd be very impressed with that. And that's what he was. He always wanted to know how I was. And I always thought that was one of the most amazing attributes of Paul's, that he always was there to help. He was always there to support you. And over those 25 years, I always knew Paul was going to be there for me personally if I ever had any issues or any problems. And I think he knew we were there for him as well, that we loved him and we wanted to help him as much as he helped us. And I think that's the friendship of 25 years of being with Paul. You had that confidence, you had that relationship that Paul knew we were there for him and that he was there for us. So I think I've relayed my major message. I'm just happy to come and share those words with you. Let me just thank NJA for hosting us tonight. Big crowd, which I think is it's tribute again to everything Paul was able to do. So thank you very much, and I'll turn it back to
Folks, we've reached an interesting point with Dave. He's retiring on September 30th. So we are thankful for what he's done for us. We also want you to meet his successor. Kimberly, stand up. Come on up. She's not prepared, but I have a lot of confidence in what she's going to say.
Thank you, Larry. I just wanted to say that I have a really interesting pathway with Dr. Winkler that began early in my teaching career, actually. About 20 years ago, I was about 5 years into teaching and was asked to move from 2nd grade to teach 8th grade advanced English, which was quite a jump. And I was nervous about it, but I thought, how can I really challenge my students to think differently, not just about learning, but about the world around them? And I saw a course that was offered on the Holocaust and genocide, and I went and I took that course. And my life, both personally and professionally, was forever changed. The way that I interacted, not just with my students, with their parents, with everyone around me, my own family. And so I think in our lives, we're really fortunate to have lots of people who come into our lives and influence us. But it's a gem to count the mentors. Those are usually 2 or 3 people who come in a really, really intimate way and touch us personally and or professionally. And I consider Dr. Winkler one of those mentors. Many years later, I came to the Department of Education as the Director of Academic Standards, and Dr. Winkler came to see me, not knowing our paths had crossed previously, about 20 years prior. And we were having conversations in my office, and he would just come down and chat, and we would talk about curriculum, and we would talk about teaching and learning, and all the things that made us passionate about education. And when I had the opportunity to serve, prior to serving as the Chief Academic Officer, I was put into the acting position. And so Paul came into my office one day and he shut the door and he looked at me and he said, "Don't act, just be confidently yourself." And I never, ever forgot that. And every time I encounter a difficult time in my career or in my personal life, I remember just to stand up and to be myself and not worry about what others think. And so in closing, I just wanted to share that the last moment, really deep memory I have of Dr. Winkler is with my own son. I have 2 boys, one who's 19 and one who is 13. And a few years ago, my younger son got very interested in the Holocaust and was doing lots of research and reading on his own. And I shared that with Dr. Winkler, who of course showed up with books and materials and videos and all kinds of things, which my son was just voraciously pouring through and wanted to talk to Dr. Winkler and wanted to learn and know more. And Dr. Winkler said, "You know, Kimberly, we have very few survivors left in our state, and we usually wait to make buddy connections with children who are, when they're in high school and can really appreciate and understand. But by the time your child is in high school, there may not be a buddy for him. And so I'd like to give your son a buddy now, because I think that he really understands what it is to feel and to have empathy for others. And so my son was given a survivor buddy a few years ago, which he has really cherished. And so Dr. Winkler's legacy certainly lives on in my family and in my professional life, and I can assure you that the commission will continue to have a very forefront position in the Department of Education, because its work isn't just about teaching the academics, it's about teaching how to be a person and have lifelong skills. So thank you.
And that's without being prepared. I just threw up. We're going to hear next from Maud Dami. I traveled with Maud and watched 31 teachers' lives change right in front of our eyes. From the camps, to the sites, to the museums, to the discussions. She had everything planned perfectly. She did a fabulous job. It was a pleasure to be her assistant. Maud, come on up and say hi.
Thank you, Larry. I've known Paul Winkler for many, many years. I first met him, he was an assistant commissioner of special education. And we went on from there. And it was such a pleasure to work with him. And he guided all of us. I've been on the commission since its inception. And some of us here today in the audience were also there at that time. And the wonderful things that he has accomplished through all these years is absolutely incredible. We just came back from another trip with teachers. Thank you, NJEA, for helping us do this. And the very first place we were in Prague, and we were at Terezin, and we lit a candle in Paul's memory. But the most amazing thing happened. Every place we went, and when we lit a candle, it was very still. And suddenly the wind kicked up. Every time this happened. So I know his spirit is with us, and Paul's spirit will continue to guide us through the years as we are dealing with anti-Semitism and everything else and all the genocides that are happening in the world. He will be there. He was there for us this summer. At every place we went, we felt his presence, and I know from now on we will. No matter what we are going to do, we will feel his presence. And as I said in the little documentary, he was a mensch, just a wonderful, wonderful person. My kids began to love Dr. Winkler. He was just such an amazing person. And as I said, his spirit will live on. He will be with us. He will guide us for the rest of our lives. Thank you.
Folks, I'd like you to welcome Barbara Gantler, who is a friend of Paul's, a colleague of Paul's, and goes back way in the beginning.
I got 5 minutes left and I can't stop.
So I met Paul in 1979. My then 11-year-old daughter wrote a message on the back of a lamb marinade that said, "Paul Winkler called about a job." And that was the start of my relationship when Paul hired me as the state consultant for speech and language. I was thrilled to get the job and have been grateful to him forever. But I was only one of the many lives, the many people whose lives he touched and affected and impacted for the better. Near the end, Paul asked me if I would speak when the time came. And I said, of course I would be honored, but I asked him, I said, what do you want me to talk about? What do you want remembered? And he said, the team, the people, the work we did. And that was in special education. Paul was very proud of the team he built. And team was the operative word. You worked together. You shared ideas. You planned. He wanted you to do well. He wanted you to have ideas, to come up with new projects, as long as it was for, how he would put it, the boys and girls. He encouraged, supported, and challenged you to do the right thing, not necessarily the political thing. You really could go to him with any new idea, and his question was, how will it help the boys and girls? He never said kids, he never said students, children, he always said the boys and the girls. He had a big sign. It's easier to get forgiveness than permission. And we took him at his word. Now, this was right at the time when the new federal legislation for special education came into effect. And New Jersey had a long history of special education, providing services. We had child study teams, due process services. But one thing we didn't have was mandatory preschool education for students with disabilities. And Paul felt very strongly that he wanted to do that. And so he worked with legislators to get the law passed. And he told a story of going to the legislature where you have to testify. You know, the department goes and they ask you questions, and it can be interesting. And he would tell them how much this was going to help children with disabilities, children who are blind, children who are deaf, children with multiple disabilities. And they listened, and then one of them said to him, "So will this cure them?" And Paul paused and said, "Yes." It's like Commissioner Hesby said, he wanted to get the job done. The bill passed, and we had preschool education for students with disabilities and never looked back. Paul was so proud of that. He knew how important families were to the education of children, and he created many programs to treat families in the schools with respect and in an inclusive manner. He developed parent training programs, parent assistance programs before they were required by law. He created the learning resource centers that still thrive, providing professional development for schools and families. Paul basically loved people. He thrived on, helping people and putting people together, making connections. He gave me a career, but he gave my husband a tennis group. And those men are here today, the topsiders, and you can tell who they are by the unique way they dress. Now, it's very